the obvious. I just begin by saying, we have to choose 20 words every week, right? Is that the same for every school? You all choose 20 words? And, right. I've spoken to a few teachers in the past, and I won't mention any names, but sometimes I've heard teachers tell me that they don't even know that there are lists available. You have all of the vocabulary from Incredible English, and then these are the words that may appear in the test. Of course, you already know that. The same for the reading. But I've spoken to some teachers, and they're not aware they have them, or maybe they don't focus, or they don't know that these are where the words come from. So if you've got any new teachers, you need to make sure that they know that this is the vocabulary that they have to prioritize. So the first week, 20 words, right? So the first thing I'll do is I'll make sure that I include all of these words from the lists. But sometimes you can get 20, right? Maybe you've got like six from Incredible English, maybe 4 or 5 from the reading. So you still need to think of a few other vocabulary. So often, for example, so we've got Incredible English, we've got to include the words in that list, and also the reading. And then if you've got some more spots to fill, I often try and find some vocabulary in the motivated writing books. Hello! It's okay? So, sometimes in motivated writing you'll get like the conjunctions like as soon as or in conclusion, things like that. So I will include things from motivated writing, and then after that, if there's any other vocabulary from Roundup, any words that they're unfamiliar with, I'll include those. Sometimes when they do a weekly test, they have the outside reading at the end of the units, right? And sometimes we'll find that they don't know some of the words in there. So perhaps we can take some words from the outside reading. Also, when you're teaching during the week, you might be like, for example, I just used 1 week. This is 1 week where we were talking about, it was at the airport. It's Incredible English 3, I think. So this is all of the vocabulary from Incredible English. Some is from the reading books. And then you can see, you asked me earlier, why do I have terrorists here? Well, simply because we were talking about planes. And I want to make children afraid of flying. I tell them lots of stories, like, hey, you can't say bomb on a plane. So anyway, so that's where I draw my list. So finding the vocabulary is the first thing you need to do. Okay, so it's got it all here. And I think basically that's what it's... Oh, yeah, what I want to say is, how many, like in your schools, because I know schools, we all do the same things, but perhaps we have different systems. Do you focus very heavily on spelling for the vocabulary now? Because actually in the big test, they don't need to spell. All the words are there. The only thing they need to do is the copying, right? Because you have the first page is always, you've got the sentences and you have to fill in the blanks. And then on the second page you have the sentence, and then you've got multiple choice. So there's no real need to spell it. There's no real need to practice the spelling. Sorry? Sorry? For the younger kids, yeah, for level, it's like grade 1 and grade 2, right?
Level 6.
Okay, yeah, because I'm not familiar with all the levels, because the classes that I teach, they come over from the kindergarten. So I think like it's the first year when they're doing is it reading starter?
Yes.
Reading starter, that's right. And then sometimes they have to choose, like you give them 3 words and they have to know which one is spelled incorrectly or which one is spelled correctly. So yeah, in the first couple of years, we try and focus on the spelling. But as they get older, I just hope that they are independent enough and they go home and they learn how to spell it.
What? Spelling bee?
Spelling bee, yeah, I don't get involved in it. I have far too many more things to do. I remember one time teacher Linda, you all know teacher Linda? Boss's wife. She, very nice lady. She is.
Awesome.
She called me one time. I think she was working at No, not Ban. Now she's at Banchi. I know she moves around. She's like a nomad. She, Da'an, right? Yeah, she was at
Yeah, she
Da'an.
was,
And
yeah.
she called me and she said, a lot of the teachers are complaining because they're asking the students to use the vocabulary, to go home and make sentences by themselves using the vocabulary. And she said that a lot of teachers are complaining because, you know, the children bring the vocabulary to school on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, and then the teachers have to check that vocabulary. And what will happen, in your experience, what will happen when you ask students to go home and make sentences by themselves? What do?
Check from the dictionary.
Check from the dictionary. So you've got these beautiful sentences and you look at the student and you think, you wrote this? Yeah. No, I copied it. So basically they're either going to copy, or some of them are going to make really short sentences. Like you give them the word satellite. So their sentence will be, this is a satellite. No, that's really useful. So I never ask the students to go home and make sentences in their books. I think it creates more problems than solutions. So that's something I wouldn't recommend doing. It's up to you. If you want extra work and headaches and tears, go ahead and do that. But I warned you. Okay, right, so basically everything I've just said is on this first page, so we can skip the first page. Okay. Oh yeah, and also like spelling tests. I know maybe sometimes some teachers, maybe they come to the class, maybe they think, oh, maybe we'll do a spelling test today. But again, spelling tests in the class, it can consume a lot of time. And I would prefer to focus, after they don't need to spell the words, so I'm talking about later, I would prefer to focus on them actually using the vocabulary, making sentences orally, not writing them down. Because I just think it's faster and it will help them to keep the vocabulary in their minds. So, making sentences for the students. This is something that I always struggle with every week. You know, we have to make 20 sentences, and I'm sitting there sometimes, and you know, maybe Tuesday evening, Tuesday afternoon, I'm trying to make the sentences for the students, and sometimes
The mind goes blank.
your mind goes blank. Exactly. Yes, you know exactly how you feel. Other times you can just do 20 in about an hour, in about 30 minutes, done. Boom. But it can be tricky sometimes. But I really think it's important to have a lot of variety in the sentences that you make. So sometimes, if it's a difficult word, I don't know, like I can't think of any examples now. Anyway, sometimes the sentence that I give them it won't be a definition, but it will be a sentence that clearly shows the meaning of the word. Because I think that, I know that again, some schools, they ask the teachers to write a definition of the vocabulary and then also make a sentence using the word. How many of your schools do that? Do they still ask you to, do you still ask the foreign teachers to write the definition?
It's optional.
It's optional, yeah. Okay, I seldom do that because I think that I explain the word while I'm in class. And I think if you spend enough time explaining the words, and you'll do that while you're teaching the material anyway. So I just think that maybe making the definitions is just extra work and not very helpful.
And the kids find it boring.
It's boring too, yeah. I mean, you're just exactly, because basically you're reading the definitions from a dictionary, so it's quite boring. You know, it's like when you open a motivated writing book and you spend an hour just making the students looking at all the instructions. Boring. You know, you can sometimes, rather than going through the instructions, I'll just go back and look at them when I feel that I need to. Okay, so all this very obvious. Is this part 2? Yeah. Teachers are required to hand in not only the vocabulary but also example sentences. Okay, and the sentences that we make, they can affect how well the students retain this vocabulary. Because you know that sometimes you teach them vocabulary, it goes in one ear and out the other, right? So yeah, you've got to find ways to avoid that. Especially when the vocabulary is not interesting or not very practical. Do you know the expression, learn something for the sake of learning? Do you know what that means? No? You just to learn something just for the sake of learning. We're not learning that sometimes there's some vocabulary, we're learning it not because they're going to use it every day, but it's because it's in the list. The only reason we're teaching those words sometimes is because it's for the test. And so those words are the words that sometimes it's hard for the students to remember. So we have that problem, and you know we all have that feeling that some of the words we're just learning them because we have to learn them. So we have to try and create sentences that grab their attention. You know, I've seen some teachers when they've written the sentences, and they're good examples, but you just read them and there's like maybe there's no humour. You know, and I think students like a little bit of humour. So I often try to include my students in the sentences that I make. I'll make some jokes about them. So I've got some examples of what I do. So one thing I do is, not all of them, but some of the vocabulary, if you've got the start, it says, I make sentences about the students in my class. So for example, I've got a student called David, and I want to teach the word illegal. So I've got David enjoys drinking expensive whiskey and smoking Cuban cigars.
Sounds like him.
Yeah. I guess he steals them from his dad's drawer. But unfortunately for David, it's illegal for him to do this. He's only 9, you know? So the students will feel a bit more interested, you know, when you're making sentences about them. A dialogue. Sometimes I don't just give them a sentence, I'll give them a dialogue, because sometimes a dialogue is a practical way to show the meaning of the word. So for example here, I want to teach them about airline, you know, like China, like an airline company. So for example, you've got here, which airline are you flying on? I'm not sure. It's just a small Chinese airline called Mayday Airlines. Do you know the meaning of Mayday? Mayday, Mayday. So I like making jokes about Chinese things. Sorry. Mayday Airlines. Why did that airline choose that name? Because Mayday is what their pilots always say before they crash. Hey, I got a laugh. See, so the students will be laughing too. Hopefully. It's very terrible when you make a really funny joke and there's silence. And I'll just think, okay, I quit, bye-bye. Yeah. You know, I always find that I'm lucky because when I get my class in the 1st grade, I always try and keep them to the 6th grade. I know that some teachers don't always have that opportunity. So I always find in the 1st grade to the 4th grade, I'm the funniest guy they know. And then by the 5th grade and the 6th grade, they'd heard all my jokes. I start saying the same jokes again. So it's quite embarrassing. Okay, so yeah, dialogues. Not always just a sentence, make a dialogue. You can get them to practice that. Again, add some humour. Kids like a bit of humour. So, for example, here you've got, could you describe the man who robbed you? Yes, he had 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. I need more detail. Oh, by the way, this one, the vocabulary would be details, right? So you just said, I've got 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. I need more details than that. Give me more details. Describe him. He had 2 ears. So try and put a bit more humour in there. Oh, sometimes you can, but if you've got a nice variety of sentences, and then at the end of the week, usually on Friday, Teacher Gillian will remind me to go through just ask the students to read through the vocabulary that I've given them at the end of the week. So hopefully they'll go home and they'll learn it, pick up the meanings. Also, I don't know if you do this, but I always tell them what kind of word it is, whether it's a noun or an adjective or an adverb. Sometimes we'll pay attention to the different types of words. Maybe sometimes I'll give them all the vocabulary and I'll ask them to tell me if the words are nouns, if the words are adjectives. Just a little bit of variety. You can do things like that. But without variety and without some humour, I don't think some of the students will be so interested in learning the vocabulary. And as I said, also find some time at the end of the week to read it all with the students. I'm sure you've had this experience, you know, but we have from week 1 to week 8, and then we have the big test, right? So often the vocabulary that you teach in week 1 and week 2, if you don't keep on using that, by week 8, you suddenly, and the test is coming, you've got 1 week to practice, and you think, okay, vocabulary, and you look at it and you think, even I've forgotten that I taught that vocabulary. And what happens? You're rushing. You're like, oh God, Teacher Gillian, can you make a list of all of the vocabulary? And you're giving students thousands and thousands of words, and learn it, remember it. But and then you're just giving yourself lots of pressure. It's a mad rush. So what I try and do is, because some of the words, you just know, you can always find that some of the words the students remember, but then there are other words you know the students are going to forget. So I always try to, I keep a little list on my table of the words, and I try to reuse them just while I'm talking to the students. Keep on using those words. So if they learn the word, for example, satellite in week 1, you know, I'll just keep on using the word or different words just so it keeps the vocabulary fresh in their mind, so that when the test time comes, much of they haven't forgotten as much as the vocabulary as they would if you didn't keep on reviewing it. So keep the vocabulary fresh. Also, what was it now? So I'm losing my track of thought. Sorry.
Specific.
Just for example, like in week 3, they learn the word cellar. It's just as an example. So you give them a sentence like, my rich uncle has a large cellar. He keeps expensive bottles of wine in it. Okay, and then maybe week 5, I have to teach the word cruel. Okay, so what I'll try and do is, when I'm making vocabulary, I'll try and include some of the old vocabulary in the new sentences. So you keep on exposing the students to the vocabulary that they've learned. So for example, in week 5, I want to teach them the word cruel. So did you hear about the cruel parents in Japan who locked their daughter in a cellar all her life? Can you help me add a question mark, please? I missed that mistake. She never went out in the sunshine until she was 27. So keep on reusing the vocabulary, just so they don't forget it. Because people in Taiwan don't have cellars, right? They have basements. Okay. So, how to practice the vocabulary. It can be hard to sometimes think of 20 sentences each week. Now, maybe some teachers won't be happy about this, but although there are 20 sentences, I would recommend making another 20. Well, maybe not another 20, but remember I told you some of the vocabulary will be in the test, and in other words you just add them. But I always try and make more than one sentence for the students. Then perhaps Teacher Gillian can put them in the test. So you've got some extra vocabulary. If the students have forgotten the words, you don't need to start making new sentences. You've got a lot of variety. And also, I would suggest that the co-teachers try and make 20 sentences too. Do you know why? Because I find that some of the co-teachers, not all of them, some of the co-teachers, sometimes they're not really sure of the words themselves, you know. And I think that if you can't make a sentence, you can't expect the students to make a sentence too. So we've got the responsibility. And then you can just hand the sentences to the foreign teacher, let the foreign teacher check. Sit down, have a conversation with your foreign teacher, right? And discuss them. And then if you do that often enough, then you'll both get better at making sentences. So I think it's definitely something that the co-teachers and foreign teachers should discuss. Also the weekly tests. You know, we get the weekly tests from the head office. And they also include lots of vocabulary exercises. But I would tell teachers, don't be afraid to rewrite them sometimes, because some of the sentences are good. Some of the sentences are maybe not so good. So every week Teacher Gillian will give me the test on a Tuesday, and then I will sit there and say, I don't want this one, I don't want this one.
Teacher Michael crossed out all the sentences that I wrote, all of them.
I don't cross them out, I just fix them. And sometimes fixing them is much easier just by erasing it.
Cross it out all. Cross it out all.
Yeah.
15 questions, I only leave 2 questions.
Yeah. Okay, so try and make as many sentences, make a lot of sentences if you can. Then, you know, for example, if you've got some students, because, you know, some students learn the vocabulary very well, right? And then you've got other students, they just struggle. They can't remember things. So if you've got some extra sentences around, you can give them some extra time. I'm sure that you all have questions about how do you help the students who can't learn the vocabulary. If anybody was going to ask me that question, I would simply say I'm going to take some of my lunchtime or ask the students to stay behind after school. Again, I think I've said this before, I'm not sure if all of the teachers have time to do that. I know that the co-teachers have to help the students do the homework in the evenings. But I think if the students need extra help, I try and make some time for them in the afternoons after they've eaten lunch or before they've had their lunch after class. Just ask the parents if they can stay a little bit late, go home a little bit late. Give them the extra help, because it's the only way to help the students who are weaker. You have to sacrifice some of your time. Well, I try to anyway. Okay, where is it now? Oh. The last part here I was talking about, in the past I asked some students to make their own sentences, and I don't think that's a good idea, because you give yourself too much work. Okay? Thank you. Right. Okay. Would you mind? We're not going to play the game exactly the way that I play with my students. But let me just tell you how I would do it normally. Don't feel nervous. Okay. Generally, like if you got, sometimes I get the boys and the girls. It's an easy way to separate them. So I get all the boys on one side. I get them to sit in a circle. Sometimes I'll ask them to rearrange the tables, because sitting like this, you got to turn around. Because I want all of the students to be working together. I don't want just like the smart one say, okay guys, listen to me, I have a sentence, and everybody follow them. So I watch them very closely, because I want everybody to be involved. You know, if they're working in a big team, you know, some students will just think, okay, we'll let the smart ones do it. Now, I can't stop that. But when they come up with a sentence, they have to come to me, come to the front, and say the sentence for me. And I'm watching everybody. Because what I can't stand is if you've got like 7 or 8 students, and you've got 6 students staring at one student, waiting for him to make the sentence. Which means, what does that mean? When you've got 6 students looking at one, they haven't prepared. They haven't listened. So they've come to the front, all they want to do is just finish as quickly as possible. And I will say, sorry, why you're all staring at David? It's not David. David is not the only person in this team. Everybody is in this team. So I want everybody to say the sentence. I don't want you staring at someone. So I'll send them back. It's fine. Then they can come back again. So you've got 2 teams. Then they don't need to do it in any kind of order. They don't need to write anything. And I'll just, for example, very simple. You've got the girls, you got the boys, and then I will say, okay, every time you use one of the words to make a sentence, come to the board and give it a check. Now, it seems like it could take a long time, right? Because 20 words is a lot. But if you play this game often enough, this is not really a game, because the games that I play are not like you get the sticky ball or you're playing baseball in the classroom, because I just think, although it's fun and I would like to do that, it's a waste of time. So I like to play games that are disguised as actually just basically learning. I'm good at disguising games. Like, okay, we're going to play a game called Sweep the Floor and go upstairs and make me a cup of coffee. Okay, so one thing that the students slowly realize is a good idea is that rather than just choosing one word to make a sentence, like there is a lot of security outside the White House. Okay, they can check one. But what I try and do is I try to say, you don't need to use, you can maybe use more than one word in a sentence. And when they start doing that, you start hearing them and they suddenly be creative. And they start making these good sentences and you think, are you my students? And because they're at the game, and they're trying to be quite fast, and they can come up with some really creative stuff. So, how about we won't separate you guys into two teams, all right? And we'll just have one side, okay? But maybe the person beside you, can you work with the person beside you, okay? And use this vocabulary to make sentences. Don't be shy, otherwise I'll feel embarrassed. So remember, you can use one word, or maybe you can. I have had some students who've done this before. This is always a good way to win. Teacher Michael, security, arrivals, departures, boarding pass, check-in, passport, board, gate, flight attendant, and luggage are words that we must learn. Can't do that. Okay. Oh. By the way, again, I'm talking like I've already introduced these words. All of these words that we discussed. So I would do this on a Friday. I wouldn't play this game if I haven't taught the words yet. So maybe I might do this with last week's vocabulary. Okay. The reason I've got arrival and arrivals is because, if I'm not mistaken, in the airport we call it the arrivals area, right? Or departures or arrivals. But sometimes, for example, when I'm teaching the vocabulary, if I just stick to that one example, lots of people go to the airport to wait for their friends at the arrivals area. Well, they will know about the arrivals area, but arrival can be used in many different ways. Like Mr. and Mrs. Smith are waiting for the arrival of their new baby. So often, because when you have the big test sometimes, you've taught the word the arrivals area while you were teaching it, and then suddenly they have a sentence like Mr. and Mrs. Smith are waiting for the arrival of their new baby. No, Teacher Michael, you didn't teach that. You told us that arrivals is the thing at the airport. Yeah, but planes are not the only things that arrive. So you have to show them other ways of using the vocabulary. One word. So I wrote the test for my level last year. I don't cheat, by the way. But of course, if you write your own test, you have an advantage, because I'm not going to include things that I didn't teach. The word that we had last semester, we were talking about weather, and there was one story, and it was they were talking about tornadoes. and it was like the one boy was saying that we were looking at the mountain, we were looking at the sky, and we could see a tornado forming in the sky. And so they understand in that context, they know that tornadoes form. So then we went on to say, well, if you see lots of black clouds in the distance, maybe that's a storm forming, you know? But then if you just talk about weather, you know, a storm forming, a tornado forming, but then in a big test, it could be, because in the big test I put a sentence, please don't, when I ask you to come to the front, please don't just run. I want you to form a line. And then boom, people didn't, they didn't know form a line. You understand what I mean? I know a lot of teachers will complain about it. Oh, no, it didn't tell us that. But it is, the words sometimes have different uses, but it's still the same meaning. But then there are other words where you've got two words and they got different meanings. We've made that mistake before, right, when we've written tests. I can't think of a word right now, but you teach one word, but it also has another meaning. So you can't teach the, I would say, teach the word and all the different ways to use it, but you don't need to worry about the other meaning. Because the vocabulary should be the same meaning as the word on the list. So things like this, make sure that you give them different examples. Don't just keep on using the examples that are in the book. They need to widen their knowledge. Okay? So, would you like to begin? Anybody have a sentence? No? Would you like to sit together? Yes, Teacher Gillian. Come on, we have to finish before midnight. That's the rule. We have to finish before midnight.
We go to the airport.
Sorry? Everybody, oh, by the way, everybody's got to listen. I don't mean to treat you like children, but this is just the rule. I want everybody to listen.
When we go to the airport, we have
Stop picking your nose.
we have to bring our passport and go to the check. Go to the.
Oh, wait a minute, I can't listen to you because Zoe's your partner, but she is not speaking. Remember the rule?
Speak together.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought giving her
Otherwise it's just one by one, yeah. And if it's a big group, you want the whole group to do it.
We have to go to the counter to check in our luggage.
Okay, one more time because I didn't hear a single word. I'm very honest.
When we go to the
So everybody can hear.
when we go to the airport.
Stop shouting!
When we go to the airport, we have to bring our passport and go to the counter to check in our luggage.
To get our boarding pass.
Huh? And what?
And to get our
Boarding pass.
See, so you've got 4 words in one sentence. Good job. Give them a clap. Here's a big clap. Ayo, it's not that good. You don't need to clap. Right. Anybody else?
Counter.
Hey, my students are faster than you guys.
We are old.
Oh, by the way, you know, I do this for the first grade and second grade classes too. The vocabulary is much easier. And I've always found that with this game they're quite enthusiastic once they understand how it works. And then they can become very creative. Anybody, please? See? No one's communicating. This is what you want. You want people to be speaking. You need people to be speaking. Right, by now, I would be shouting at my students. I would be saying, come on!
You're not so nice like that.
See, if you can't do it, you can't expect your students to do it,
I can
right?
do it.
I know you can, you have experience.
She can do it too.
Okay, everybody.
In order to avoid terrorist attacks, the security in the airport is more strict. Oh no, it's people, all the passengers need to take off their shoes to pass the customs. Oh, there's no customs.
But you're right. You said in order to avoid terrorist attacks,
The security
is very
strict in the international airport.
okay. Great.
Okay.
Wonderful, right? So in order to avoid terrorist attacks, the security at airports, at international airports is very strict. For example, you have to take off your shoes and underwear.
Only in shoes.
Oh, it's only in Japan. They're very 变态. I tried to get a job at a Japan. Huh? Underwear? I thought it's, I thought I'm going to work. I'm changing my job. Okay, come on, guys. We're getting there. You know, if it's too difficult to use more than one word in a sentence, you can just use one word as well. Because sometimes the students, sometimes you'll find that the students, they're trying so hard to think of a sentence with more than one word that they say nothing. So I say, don't worry, if it's just one word, it's still fine. Taking too long. Are you writing them down? Also, I wouldn't ask the students to write them down.
Okay.
Sorry, guys, sorry. I wouldn't ask the students to write them down because it takes more time for them just to speak. I want them just to speak.
Random.
Okay? So don't start writing. And if you if you forget, it's okay. I'll be patient. Come on, guys. Okay, Michelle, Ma.
Can we repeat the words
Huh?
that's being used?
Sure.
Okay.
Oh.
On the international flight that I took, we saw some terrorists try to damage.
Banging their heads on the wall. You see, you can do stupid things like that, doesn't it? Oh. I just killed my last brain cell. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Try to damage the airport by putting the bombs into the luggage.
Okay, by putting bombs in their luggage. Okay, good. It's a simple one. We are not allowed to. There are some things that we are not there are some things that.
The fruits.
Huh?
Fruit.
Yeah, bringing fruit, meat is on an airplane is illegal, right? You know, sometimes when the students are taking a long time to come up with sentences, then you can start prompting them, start giving them a few ideas. Okay? So, yeah, I made one for you. Okay? We've got a few more now.
I have another sentence.
Okay, I want you to be on my team. Hard working.
One, you have to correct my English. There's a, how to say, it's a truth. Teacher Vicky quit her job at Sunshine School. She's working as a flight attendant in Evergreen Airline.
Okay, is that true?
Yes.
True.
Teacher Vicky, the manager from...
No.
No. So I have to say.
I was nervous because I thought you said Teacher Vicky has quit her job. She's now working as a terrorist. That would be much more interesting. Okay, we want. Unless if you don't want to make any more sentences, it's fine. But you get the idea. But I would say two teams. Two teams is enough. And remember, get them in a circle. Put the tables together. Get them working together. And if they are taking a long time, you can give them some ideas. Oh, one thing you want to avoid though is some students, because we give them the vocabulary list, right, and we give them sentences, don't let them make the same sentences that you gave them. Because you want them to be creative. Because surely, I think you all know that the best way to learn something is by actually using it. Use it or lose it. So that's why I think this is always a good game. I don't play this all the time, but it's definitely something that I do before the tests. Because, you know, if you're teaching your class, you'll know that some of the words is very easy. You know, like luggage. You know, you don't need to keep on practicing luggage. They all know luggage. So maybe what you could do is, maybe near the test, the 2 weeks before the test, you make lists of all the words that they struggle with. You know, sometimes you can put 2 words that are very similar. Like, although it hasn't happened, you've got the word effect and effect. You know, I didn't even know the difference about this when I first came to Taiwan. I thought it was the same word. You know, because this is, you know the difference, right? Yeah?
Noun verb.
Yeah, noun verb, right? So we got the noun, and we got the, then we got the verb. Yeah, so for example, if you have to teach words that are very similar, this often happens with the idioms. You know, the idioms, sometimes, you know, some idioms you get like lots of easy ones, and then you've got some that are very similar, but they're not the same. You know, and it's weird. I often find that like the 1st and 2nd grade students, their idioms are sometimes more difficult than the older students' idioms. So, yeah. So actually I'm going to talk about idioms, because basically idioms is just more vocabulary, right? Okay. So this is a good game to play. I know that it didn't seem like much fun today, but it is. Trust me. Trust me. Okay? Right, so, yeah, just a quick thing. 2 teams check the box as they work together to use the vocabulary. Encourage them to use multiple words in one sentence, or... Oh, it doesn't also, it doesn't have to be a sentence. You know? It could be like... You can ask the students to, like, you've got 8 people in a team, you can have 4 and 4, and they can make a little dialogue, you know? You know, say like, excuse me, which gate should we go to? I'm not sure. Well, how can we find out? We need to board the plane very quickly. So a little dialogue like that. All those things they can do as well. Get them to make the dialogues if they want. Get them to act things out. And also not just like, if you go to the airport, you know, encourage them to maybe do a little bit more emotion, a little bit more acting. Because it will just help them to stay in their mind. Where are we? Page number, okay. Number 5, sorry. Okay. So, the next thing for vocabulary is we want to keep the vocabulary fresh. We've spoken about this before. Vocabulary is easily forgotten, especially when it is seldom used or is too specific to a topic, right? Like, for example, we were talking about weather. And what was it now? You've got words like precipitation. You know, from the science, the one about the water cycle, right? And you've got precipitation. Is this the kind of word that you hear students using daily? They come into the class. Hi, Teacher Michael. Did you notice an awful lot of precipitation recently? You know, so these words, they're very specific, they're very technical, right? They're not going to be using these every day. So these are the ones that you really want to practice. You know. Oh, also, when I make the vocabulary list for them at the week, sometimes a word like precipitation. When you're doing, you know, you get the science units in Incredible English. And some of the science is quite simple, but some of the science is quite tough. So, one way to review the science is, I will basically just steal a sentence from the book. You know, but just reword it. Use different words to say the same thing. Because then that way, when they're going home and reading the vocabulary, they're also learning some facts. Because precipitation is like a scientific word, right? So you want them to learn the meaning of that. So yes, words like that, you want to keep it fresh. I've said this before, words taught in weeks 1 to 3 may have been completely forgotten by week 7 and 8, which is the test time. And so if you haven't kept the words fresh, at the end there's a big mad rush, and you might even have to start reteaching those words again. And Teacher Gillian, we always know that when we mark the tests, when we mark the big tests, it's always very disappointing when the students lose points in the vocabulary. Because you can see that, you know, some of the students have learned it, and perhaps the students who make the mistakes are a little bit not very intelligent. But it might just be that they've just simply forgotten the words. That's really no me, right? It's really unlucky. It's really sad. So you've got to make sure that that vocabulary is fresh in their minds. Because even I forget which vocabulary I teach. I have to keep on reminding myself. So I've said it before. Deliberately overuse words in class to keep it fresh. So for example, like 1 week we have to teach expert. You know. I might just go around the class and say, okay, Teacher Ma is an expert liar, or maybe you're an expert in history. We're just saying things around that. But then the following week, am I just going to forget about that word? No. So you know, maybe something in the class like, oh, the air conditioner is broken. You know, who should we call? An expert? Maybe. Well, that's not. We just call a repairman. But anyway, just keep on using those words. Keep it fresh. So there's a few things you might say to the kids. I can't help Stephen. He's crazy. I'm just a teacher. We need an expert, right? We need an expert to help him. Or a silly thing like, I'm an expert sticky ball thrower. Watch. You know. Call Lisa. She's an expert at making naughty students behave. Recycle words so that they see this, so that the students see them often. So again, like when you're doing week 3 or week 4 vocabulary and you're making the sentences for them, you can include some of the words from the previous week. So you're not testing on them as words, but they're seeing those words again and again and again, so it's staying fresh in their mind. If teachers keep on exposing students to words and encourage them to incorporate them into their spoken English, they'll retain it better. It's always disappointing to see students losing points in the big test because they've completely forgotten a word. If they're not STU present, it might just be a simple lack of practice. Okay? I don't know how many of you do this, but I always ask my co-teachers to, before the big test or a few weeks before the big test, we have the lists, right? Where is it? Where are the lists that we have? We have these lists. They're for us. But then I'll ask Teacher Gillian or Teacher Maggie to also make a list of the words for the student. Excuse me. So you've got the words, you've got the meanings, and you know, you can look through these and you can ask the students maybe to okay guys, let's highlight all of the words that we already know very well. You know? So when we're going through all of these words, we can even just highlight the words that they need to pay attention to, or I'll ask them, which are the words that you don't really know very well, and then highlight those ones. Concentrate on the words that you don't know very well. So they should have a list of these. Maybe you can laminate it like you laminate the worksheets for the verbs. You know, you get the verb list, right? You know, to go, see, saw, seen. So just things like this, all stuff that they can use to prepare for the big tests. And also, I would recommend, you know, imagine if you've got 20 words here, imagine 13 of these words are from the list. I don't think it's necessary to include the words that you've just added by yourself. Focus on the words that are going to be in the test, because that's the most important thing, right? We'll get judged on that. Okay? Yeah. Also, in the weekly tests that come from the head office, we get the questions, right? So we got a sentence and then we have the multiple choice answers. I sometimes try to include the words that they easily get confused by. So for example, here we got one: how long we live, how well we take care of our health. You know the answer?
Depends on.
Depends on, right. Because I remember in one where we got depends on and contributes to. So get them to read them all and mix them up, but also keep on using the words that they get confused. You know, some of the words are very simple, but mix them up. Get those words that are similar, very similar meanings. Keep on practicing them. You don't need to make lots of these because they'll get lots of practice in the weekly tests anyway. That's why I don't make too many worksheets for the vocabulary, because they do a lot in the tests. So when I practice the vocabulary, I like to do it orally, because I think they have enough practice in the tests. But for extra help, any tricky words, you can make a few. Here, again here, be careful. You might hurt the sofa, you might damage the sofa, you might broken the sofa. So basically you want to teach the difference between hurt and damage, right? Because damage is usually for a thing and hurt is for a physical, for a person. Idioms. Can I ask you, in your schools, who teaches the idioms? Is it the foreign teachers, or did the Chinese teachers take that responsibility? Foreign teachers, yeah? Am I the only one who passes all the responsibility to you?
You told them to.
Yeah, but I don't really have too much time to teach the idioms every week.
But we don't need to teach them every week. Every
So-
2 weeks we have one.
Ah, okay,
right?
so in your school it's the foreign teachers that teach the idioms, that introduce the idioms. Oh, yeah, because
Because
usually...
in our class is different. I make the idiom list. 1 week for one. So after 1 week one, and then after 1 week I'll give them one more. Only 10 words. And every time I would repeat, I would read with them, and here Michael will teach them one more time.
Mhm.
So I didn't give them the whole list from office, because
Mhm.
there are so many sentences we can use it in the test. So I didn't give them the whole list or put them in the vocabulary, because teacher Michael's vocabulary is already a lot. I cannot put them. You can take a look. You can take the last one. Always give us a very long sentence.
Yeah, I like to make long sentences.
Very, very long. Every sentence got 4 lines. So I cannot put any more idioms inside.
We sometimes include the idioms in the weekly vocabulary too, if they're quite difficult.
Every week we will include the idioms inside for the test.
Uh-huh.
But not in the vocabulary, because no more space.
Yeah. So maybe in different schools it's different, but for Teacher Jill, in my class, Teacher Jillian will teach the idioms, and then maybe after you've taught 10, then I will practice with them.
Yeah.
So she's taking responsibility at first, and then I will come back and review, and then I'll find out how well they've learned them.
How bad I cannot teach them. And in the review list, I even put the phrases inside.
Teacher Jillian, also sorry to interrupt you, but do you find that like sometimes the students maybe they pay less attention to some of the things that you're doing, but when I'm doing it maybe they'll pay more attention?
Yeah, you're better.
No, it's not about. It's not about. I'm not saying it's not about better, but
I know.
But you know what I mean,
Pay
right?
more attention from
it's just like some students will pay more attention to the co-teacher, and some students they pay more attention to the foreign teacher. So if you're both doing it, you're going to make sure that hopefully you can grab everyone. You know, some students they're very close to the Chinese teacher, right? And some students are, it's not about better. You're so sensitive. Although it's probably true.
It's true. Okay.
Okay, so yeah, again, you know this already now. Idioms are an important feature and must be taught with the same care as the vocabulary. As I know, well actually now I know I'm wrong, the co-teachers teach the idioms. Actually, only in my class. But the foreign teachers should not leave it completely to the co-teachers. Students need to learn about 20 before the big test, right? Is that right? About 20? Okay. And because we don't have any workbooks for the idioms, right? We just have those worksheets. So if you're going to make worksheets, then I would say the idioms are the time you're going to make the worksheets, because we got no book. For the book, sometimes we can just go back to the book, and if you're doing science and incredible English, you can reread the science. Maybe you can make a worksheet if you have time. But for the idioms, you want to give them lots and lots and lots and lots of sentences. You know, and then after, if you've got 20 and you discover, well, they know 12 of them very well. Well, then when the ones that they know well, then you don't need to keep on reviewing them. So you can reduce it down until you know that you've minimized how many idioms they're not completely sure about. You don't want to just keep on doing 20 all the time, because it just takes too long. So focus on the ones that they don't know so well. Okay. Where are we? Students need to learn, we said that. These can be big, the idioms are close. Oh yeah, we said that some of the idioms are very close in meaning. And some of the idioms, they're not the words, they're not the way that children speak. You know? So again, we're just learning them because we have to learn them, you know? So there are some of the really phrases that kids would not use, and these don't appear in books, so you'll probably need to make worksheets. But these don't need to be long. They don't need to be long. Here, you've got a short, I'll just give you an example of a short one here. Some are easier than other, and here's an example. So, 5 sentences, it's not too much, right? You could do this perhaps in 15, 20 minutes, hopefully. So you've got all the idioms there. Do you want to read them? Can you read number 1 for me? This is my wife, by the way. This is another of Teacher Michael's boring jokes. Ella. Sorry. I never do that. I'm sorry. The next time she sees him picking his belly button, she's going to leave him. Yeah? Okay, number 2. Sometimes. Right, especially Taiwanese parents.
We can protect
Protect them from all the dangers of life.
We can't. Oh, I should be we. We can't. Right. Sorry. I'm always making mistakes in my worksheets. But see, I always say, see, you're paying attention. You passed the test. You found my mistakes. I made them deliberately. Number 3.
put down
If you guys read like that in my class, I might complain. I might invite some students to come and act it out, right? You know, put down your gun. You know, that you've got 10 seconds. No, I'd rather die than... So you can get the kids to come and act out. It's a little bit of fun. Number 4, don't. I'll put it off today and do it next week. And finally, wow, I didn't think that quitting smoking would change my life. Now, taking a look at those idioms, which of them is going to be hard for the students to really catch the meaning of? Put down is easy, right? Put down the pen, this is a very basic one. But you've got a tough one there, right? Prove to be. Yeah, I mean, how many children use that in their daily lives, right? It's very tough. So, you know, after I've done this, I might only practice put up with, prove to be, and protect from. The other ones, I think I can trust my students to learn them. You know, so you've got 20, you start reducing it down, and then until they're focusing on the tricky ones, and hopefully they'll understand it. Prove to be. Almost done here. Over the weeks, the teachers will be able to find out which words are easily confused and then you can focus on those ones. By the time the test comes round, they should be ready and have a good shot, a good opportunity at getting them all right. And there's just a little tip. Why not get the students to act out the dialogue, including the idioms and the vocabulary? It's fun, and if they're having fun doing it, there's more chance of them learning the things. So, for example, it could be, "Dad, help! Mum is killing me! I can't protect you from her." "Why not? Your mum is Teacher Lisa! I can't protect you, son.
I'll be dead.
In this house, Teacher Lisa is the boss. I'm the woman." Okay, right. There's not much really else I can say about the vocabulary, so hopefully you have some questions. Any questions? What difficulties do you have? Anybody? No questions, so vocabulary is very easy.
Everybody can do
Just teach them, go home, learn it, come back in 8 weeks and pass the test.
When you give them the vocabularies, how do you do? You read them or you let them read? Or you read first? Like these are like 4 lines each. How do
yeah.
you do with it?
Yeah, I know, they're very long
That's good. I
sometimes.
mean, like, it gives
Yeah.
you more.
Now generally in my class, Teacher Lisa would just tell me, "Michael, shut up, I need 10 minutes. And then she would ask the students to read them, and then I would interrupt every minute.
Or you explain to them?
Well, because by the time they read this vocabulary, the week is over.
Okay.
So they should know the vocabulary.
But they get the vocabularies on Fridays, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're not teaching
You're
every
right.
week. So
You're
this
right.
one will be for the next week.
Okay, yeah. So
Right.
so basically I would just you're telling them what the vocabulary for the week is. Hey, wait a minute. I'm getting confused now. So the vocabulary give them on Friday is the one that they've learned that week, right? It's been too long. It's been 3 weeks since I was
I
teaching.
know.
I
Still having
forget,
hangover.
I forget everything during Chinese New Year.
I know.
Every time we have Chinese New Year, I go to school like this, so I don't know how to I lose all of my confidence.
Not that, but yeah.
Yeah.
So, like it's,
I just think I'm a bad teacher. I'm a fake. Yeah, so just second grade, and then the third grade we give them to someone else for 1 year, and then I get them back the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th. So they know my style, but it's very difficult when you take over someone else's class. And I know that often happens, right? It's very, especially, I always, in my experience, the worst kind of class is a class like maybe in the 4th grade or the 5th grade, and they've had like 6 different teachers in 3 years, and then suddenly they say, "Teacher Lisa, Teacher Michael, or Teacher Jocelyn, go and save them." And you can't just change their attitude. You can't just change their attitude overnight. By the time they're 5th grade, they're almost teenagers. Those monsters called teenagers. Every time I think of high school class, I remember going to your school on Saturday mornings. The worst experience of my life. I hate teenagers. Children are lovely from the age of 6 to 10.
Yeah.
And then they become horrible. Yeah. Maybe you must have some teachers at your school who are struggling. Any problems that some teachers have, or they ask you questions, they want to know how to solve a problem?
In my class, we just love to play games, and if you can't introduce any games,
So they have been spoiled.
they're used to games.
How old? What grade are they in? Fifth grade. Oh, yeah. You see,
Very challenging.
I'm sure. Did Lisa tell you that she doesn't play games? Oh, you were not. Well, you're not here this morning. I'm sure Lisa told you that she seldom plays games. I seldom play games. My games basically I just have fun with them. I'm running around playing games with them, inviting them to the front, just having fun with the language. So I try to be like the comedian, the entertainer, the clown. So I think that because I'm a clown, they don't miss games. I very seldom hear my students say, "Teacher Michael, can we play a game?" Because I'll probably just say no. But yeah, but when they've been playing games for too long, it's kind of spoiled, and then so they just think, oh, this just learning. We just come here to learn, so it's very difficult to change that, right?
So how do you introduce?
When you say games, what kind of games? Are you talking about
They
sticky
love
ball?
sticky balls, but they go crazy, and it's really very hard to really.
How about, for example, if you say, okay, we're going to play a game,
Incorporate with the.
but you've got to cooperate and follow my way first, all right? And if you can do that, it's just like anything. Like if you want to let them watch a video, you know, on Friday, I often let my students watch a video on Friday, or there's a supermarket near here. I'll sometimes take them to the supermarket. But I'm not going to take them to the supermarket if they're not following my instructions or not performing as well as I want to do. So it's just like an alcoholic, someone who can't stop drinking. You can't just make them stop. Well, maybe you can. You can say, okay, just 4 cans of beer today, and then 3 cans of beer next time. But you've got to slowly start weaning them off, or make demands to say, we'll play a game the last 10 minutes, the last 5 minutes, but you're going to do what I want you to do first. That's all I can say, because Rome wasn't built in a day. But you've got to slowly wean them off the games. Yeah. Yes, it's very strange. The fifth grades and they still want to play the games. Anything else?
Yeah, Teacher Michael.
Yes?
For example, they have 20 words per week, right? How do you read the word? Do you teach one day ahead? For example, Monday you teach Wednesday's vocabulary, Wednesday you teach Thursday, or you just teach from the book. Whenever you have a new vocabulary from the book, just explain to them.
Yeah. I just when we meet the vocabulary, I introduce it. I don't actually have a vocabulary class. I won't introduce it before, because I want them to see it. I don't know just to write a word and explain. Of course, sometimes when there's a new word, I will explain it, but I explain it when we come to that word. I don't have any set structure, and I just know that by the end of the week, the 20 words that they have on that list, they've heard that, they've used that at some point during the week. I don't want to give them any words in there that I haven't taught in the class.
So, excuse me, who picked the word?
Me. Me. Like I said, the words that come from the lists, and then any words that we've had during a discussion. Because I think it's up to the teacher. After you've chosen the words from the list, it's up to the teacher. You know? Yes?
For example, damage has 2 part of speech. So you make 2 sentences.
Oh, right. Yeah. I forgot to mention that. Yeah, because you got verb like damage, like he damaged his car, or there was a lot of damage caused by the earthquake. Well, in the vocabulary list that we get, they will tell you if it's a verb or if it's a noun. And sometimes I might teach both. But if I feel that teaching the verb and the noun is going to confuse them, then I will just stick to the verb. But for example, damage, I don't think it's too difficult. So I might make a couple of sentences on the board. Let me erase this. Erase this game that nobody finished. Oh, hurt my feelings. That's okay, my students like it, so that's the only thing that matters. Okay, yeah, so for example, you've got the word damage, you know? So we say, a lot of damage was caused by the earthquake, right? And then, please don't damage that vase. It's very valuable. Okay, so the same word, right? So I ask them to read it, and then I'll say, okay, so the word is damage. So I'll write it here, damage, and then I'll say damage can be a verb, but it can also be a noun. So then I'll ask them, okay, can anybody tell me which sentence has the word damage that is the verb? Please don't damage, don't break, don't smash, don't destroy. You know, you can teach all those words. Maybe even while you're doing that, you can also tell them the difference between damage and destroy, right? Damage might be, I can't do it like that. Damage, and then destroy! And then, so you can teach that. And then again, in the next one, then also you've got the noun. A lot of damage was caused. Who is going to pay for the damage, will you? You're going to pay for the damage? Okay. Yeah. So again, I will teach both of them, but if like here. Oh. Right, yeah, you've got, look, you can see it here. If it says the verb, you don't have to teach the noun. It's your choice if you want to, because we should not put, if it says verb and we use the noun in the test, it's unfair. You don't get the points back. So that's okay, right? Don't you love it when you can get the points back? Yay! Yay, made a mistake. All the points back, points back, points back. Teacher Kathleen. Teacher Kathleen, you know when you get lots of phone calls on test day?
Sometimes.
Do you just turn off the phone?
It doesn't stop ringing.
No, I know. I feel sorry for Kathleen because we know that Lisa and we've done that. It's so difficult. Even we make a test and there's always mistakes. And I wrote, and I said, oh, I made a mistake. But then everybody else is fine because they're going to get the points back, right? So you should encourage me to be careless. Okay. Anything else? No. So maybe we end the class then if there's no more questions. I hope it was useful today. Really, were you expecting a little bit more? Because we don't really have vocabulary in the schedule, you know. So I try and fit in vocabulary when I have 10 minutes at the end of the class, or I have a little bit of time. But it's all like juggling, right? You're trying to do the roundup. It's like, you know, spinning plates. You're running around, or like you're playing baseball, and you want to be on first base, second base, third base, and home base at the same time. It's really, really hard. But you just got to keep on top of it. Keep keep control of it. Okay? And also, managers, make sure that your teacher. Do you have any teachers, especially the new teachers, you give them a list,
Yes.
and you tell them, these are the words that will be in the test. And it's in one ear and... yeah. So you've got to make sure, please, listen to the words that are coming out of my mouth. These are the most important words that your students must learn. Forget about terrorists.
You know, during the PDA, some parents would suggest like they want kids to be able to do some writing, like composition or something. You are so into, you know, the grammar and, you know.
Yeah, well, we have some.
Asked us that.
We have some. Yeah, we get asked that too. We have some. We have like the composition writing and all the.
Yeah, like we have YouTube. I did tell them they were wanting like more regular.
Yeah, but until Mr. Chen puts that in the schedule, it's out of our control. And what happens when you ask the students to make compositions?
More marking.
Oh, yes. What is this? What language is this? You know, I went to the park recently. Oh my God! I quit. Remember what I said before about because you said about the compositions. If the parents ask you for the compositions, remember I told you in the motivating writing you got the first copy and the second copy. If you just get, I'm not saying you always do that, but once in a while, maybe you can get the students to write one composition together. You can do it on the board. You can. So you're going to make the story, and then they compose it by themselves. And then on the other page, you know, if you've got some extra time, like you've got like passive voice from the roundup, maybe you can get them to write a few short compositions. You can tell them like 50 or 60, 70 words. That's about 8 or 9 sentences, right? And in that way, it's much easier to follow a structure. So you can find time to do the compositions, but not every week. Yeah, after the big test. Oh yeah, and another thing is sometimes like I'll ask them, you can ask them like, for example, like you give them a list of vocabulary and you can, like a list of vocabulary, 20 words, and you can say, maybe you can write a composition, and the winners will be the people who use the most of the vocabulary here in their 50 or 60 word composition.
From some same theme, like, right?
Yeah. And also like, maybe like rather than having single students do the compositions, maybe put them in pairs or in groups of 4. Because that way, when they're doing the composition, when they're working in a team, they're also talking to each other. You know, they're not sitting there in silence, just raising your hand. Teacher Michael, how do you spell it? You know, so I like it like if they're doing something in a small group, they're talking. I like noise, not too much noise, but I like noise. I like them. I want to hear them speaking.
Thank you.
Okay.